Hey everyone, welcome back to Workshop Quick Takes. Thanks for joining us again today on my YouTube channel. We're back on the 2000 Jeep Cherokee XJ, and today we're going to look at a little bit of preventive rust maintenance. In spite of the fact that Colorado cars tend to hold up fairly well, rust can start in some strange places. The windshield, of course, is a popular one, and so far that's the only place we've found serious rust starting on our vehicle. However, the pinch welds along the bottoms of the doors are another possible one, and those can even start rusting from inside the door where you're not seeing it. So it's sometimes called sneaker rust because it sneaks up on you. Now, this is fairly easy to deal with, especially if you catch it early. But if you start to see it early and you're like, maybe next year, by next year you might have a more serious problem. So you want to get on that as soon as you catch it. And if you're not looking for it now, you probably should be. So come on outside, let's see what we found on our vehicle and what we did to prevent it from spreading. Doors are always kind of a pain to take apart, so anytime you've got one taken apart for some other reason, it's a good idea to use that opportunity to look for any like paint damage or whatever you might need to touch up. And in this case, since we're going for the full works along the bottom seam here, and I already have the speaker out, I've got the plastic dust cover off, and I've got a huge chunk of the wiring harness out as well. That gives me the maximum possible access short of disassembling the entire window regulator and track circuit. We have shown the front door disassembly many times. Check any video on our channel that involves front door hardware and you can see it from yet another angle. But if you have never done a car door before, it can be a little intimidating. We recommend an advanced supply of the plastic trim clips that retain the door trim card to the frame and plastic trim panel tools. Metal tools will tend to destroy old plastic. We take the door apart next. That involves screw, 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 and plastic retaining clips. Removing the door wiring harness from the door is not necessary for the work we're going to do today, but if you need access to more of your door to get to additional problem areas, we did post that video recently on our channel as part of a guide to repairing the harness. Here we are simply showing a summary of how the door comes apart. This is aftermarket, so the screws are a little bit different than the ones that'll be there if you still have the factory. This here is double stick tape that I previously applied after doing the speaker install. If you still got the OE, it'll probably be more of a tarry gooey like substance under here. Down along that seam there, where the drain holes are, that unfortunately is a very common place for rust starts, especially on some vehicles like this one where they didn't use seam sealer down in there. And so anything that runs down in the window or any dirt that works its way back up from the bottom side, gets up in here when you're four-wheeling or whatever in deep water, or just happens to run down the window, whatever, it gets stuck down in that track, and if it's carrying any salt or if any moisture sits in there, then that gets lots of rust starts. And a lot of times they start from the inside first, and then you start to see them down here after they're already well along. All right, question, why is it important to get on these doors so quickly when you start to see that rust like that? Well, the answer is you have a very narrow window to actually deal with it. These here are a pair of doors off another 2000 Jeep Cherokee Sport. At a glance, both of these doors appear to be in pretty good shape. Very clean, mostly rust-free on the surface, other than a few dings and nicks, and even back here, where the trim panel's been busted up, I'm not seeing any rust bubbling up or anything like that back there either. It's all pretty clean. The one sign of trouble from this side, though, is we get down here, and right down there, we're starting to see some rust, and it's not just surface rust either, it's actually bubbling into the paint, and that's a bad sign. As soon as that starts happening, everything else goes bad afterwards. Over on this door, same story. The entire door looks clean except down at the bottom where, if we pay attention, starting to see some rust break through. Looking inside the door, now we see it going on again. The side impact crash rail there has rust, and notice how it's on the bottom side mainly? That's where, when the water runs down the inside of the window, it's going to run down structures like this, collect on the bottom, and kind of hang out there until it finishes dripping off or drying off. And now let's look down on the bottom. Some oil residue there from when I had to pull apart some connectors, but two things you should note there. It looks fairly clean overall, and the weep holes are not obstructed, but in between them there's a lot of dirt sitting down in there. If I were to turn this door upside down and shake it, all that's going to come falling out, and notice all of the surface rust starts. So the door is trying to start rusting from the inside down there, and the same reason, that's where it all collects. Down here along the bottom lip, this is where all the worst problems are starting. Some of this here is still surface, but right here, that's the steel actually starting to rot through. It's possible this could be still wire wheeled and maybe slowed down or stopped for a while, But the bottom lip of this door really needs to be cut out and have a reinforcing piece welded back in if it's going to continue being used on a long-term vehicle. Looking at the passenger side door here, it's pretty much the same thing. Got a couple spots here where it's starting to bubble. That's a bad sign. Right in here is pretty bad. And right in here. In fact, over here you can see it's rotted enough that flakes of rust have already come off of it. So hopefully there's a pretty good illustration of why you need to get on this job as soon as you see it starting to form. You have a very narrow window to actually get the wire brush on it, clean the surface rust up enough that you can put a conversion primer on it and hopefully stop the rust, and then put something over it, Rust-Oleum, POR 15, whatever you're going to use, that will hopefully prevent it from breaking back in again. Doesn't look like much, but it does have just a little bit of rust starting to bubble and break through. A couple of the other doors are worse. And then along here as well, you can't really see it well, but there is just a hint of rust starting to form on the surface there. So we do need to attend to this before it gets worse. Now, one thing I already did earlier, besides wiping up the extra dust in there, is first I tried to flush that out as much as I could at the car wash. When I still had the door assembled, I just shot a little bit of water up in there and then let it all run back out. Since then, I've come along with this plastic bristle brush and I've worked it out that way too. But the next thing I need to do is just wire wheel any surface rust I can get off the bottom of the lip here on the outside. And these can and do throw these little bristles around as they operate. So not even eyeglasses are enough protection for that. You need to be wearing safety goggles. Since this doesn't have too serious of rust damage yet, it's not going to take a lot more than that. Okay, got the goggles off now that we're done with the pointy bristle brushy steppy. But a very lightly damp rag is next, and I'm just going to try and wipe the dust and debris I just created off of the seam line. Again, not trying to, push water into any of these channels along here. I don't want that. I don't know if it shows up very well, but if you look real close, you can start to see some of the pitting that's forming in there. That's where what's just beginning to rust on this door. Next step I got going here is this Rust-Oleum Rust Reformer. I'm just going to give a light spray over the areas I've been working on. I'll use this as a primer and then paint over that. This particular vehicle has a truck bed coating on the outside, so I don't care if it oversprays a little bit. However, anywhere that I've made bare metal is a place I want to make sure it gets coated. Next up, I'm going to try and get a little bit down in the crack from the inside and see if we can hit any rust spots that might be starting to form there too. Should go without saying, but make sure your window is up while you're doing this because this spray will go everywhere, and if the window's even part way down, then it's going to end up on the glass. Okay, we'll give that just a couple minutes to dry out, and then when it does, we're coming back with Black's Rust-Oleum. Okay, about a half hour has passed. Everything seems to be good and dry, which means that any rust conversion that was going to occur has also occurred. So, next step is Rust-Oleum in a can. Black Rust-Oleum doesn't do well on exterior surfaces. It tends to sunwear pretty badly, I've discovered. But if you get it under cracks in areas like this where it'll almost never be exposed, it's going to make a nice permanent, very tight rust and water sealing surface. Because you want to brush this stuff in and let it actually run down in the cracks and crevices, but keep in mind it is going to remain pretty sloppy for quite a while, and it will run places, including out of the weep holes underneath the door. So you don't want to just close the door and let those pool up down on the ridge here if that's going to cause any issues with your paint job. Me, not so much, but I'll still leave it open for a little while and just to let it off gas because I don't want the whole vehicle smelling like Rust-Oleum more than it's already going to. And keep in mind, this is an oil-based paint. It is very messy. I highly recommend gloves for this step. It does need to be mixed thoroughly. I've already given it a pretty good shake, but make sure you do as well. Also, when working with these oil-based paints that are such a mess to clean up, I highly recommend these little cheap disposable brushes. Overall, they're probably better for the environment than, I don't know, a gallon of lacquer thinner to clean a good brush you care about. One thing these do is sometimes leave bristles behind, but down here in the door where I'm doing most of my work, or under the sill here where I'm going to do touch-up, I don't care. That's the stuff right there. It's pretty sloppy in its native state, but when that dries, that forms a nice thick rubbery coating. also want to run down into the seam here where anywhere it might be peeling back from the door, either just because it wasn't secured very well or because it is starting to pop out from rust. Either one. Okay, here we are. It is now later. As predicted, we've had a little bit more runoff. It's still wet though, which means I can get rid of this extra pretty easily. That one's okay for the most part. That one, yeah, a little more runoff back there. Not as clean as we could hope for though. It didn't like drop down below the door much, except for a little tiny bit there and over there. So we're drying out nicely and just about ready to put things back together. Okay, next up we got to do this door. This one only has 3 screws, 2 large ones and one small one behind the handle here, but then I think there's a bunch more clips in the corner around here. Once again with the plastic crowbar. Let's start in the lower corner here because this is probably the loosest spot. Once again, unclips from this piece up by the door. Okay, then looking inside, we've got another clip here that needs to come out. And then just like before, we have the little clips on the door here that are a little bit of a problem to get at, but not too bad. If need be, it can be helpful to use the plastic crowbar on these as well. Especially this one here, which is kind of underneath. Weird to get at. As always with these door pieces, just kind of pay attention to the overlap top and bottom here, because if you get these flipped around, sometimes you can still get the door put back together, but then these are bound up and won't operate. I've previously been inside this door, so you'll see that there's already non-OE tape on here holding the dust shield on. But either way, be the same sticky to peel off otherwise. This door here concerns me a little more than the other ones though, because take a look at that rust down there. See how I got that surface rust all the way across the bottom? That door is about to just pop if I don't get on this quick. Yeah, it's hard to see down in there, but this door is definitely a little bit more concerning for me because I see rust starting to come in on the inside back there as well. So, a lot of dirt back in there. I might actually need to wash this inside this door out with a sprayer and come back to it tomorrow. Yeah, I won't be able to get this door properly cleaned for painting unless I do that first, so. Oh yeah, whole bunch of dirt coming out of there, and more glass, and rocks, okay. That's all more glass that just came out. Now what I can do while it's still wet, and then just wash it again, is give it the old wire brush treatment. Once again, I am wearing the safety glasses and the gloves because this can throw wire bristles out while it's operating. Just one of these in your eyeball will make you really wish you had looked dumb wearing safety glasses. In spite of how much surface rust was on there, that leaves me a little more encouraged because I'm getting down to pretty clean metal pretty quickly, which means it's hopefully not too late. What I don't understand is why part of the bottom seam here is already popped out. It's almost like somebody was just monkeying with the door trying to straighten it or something, but usually that only happens otherwise when rust is inside bubbling it apart, but I don't see any evidence that it's that deep. But anyway, now that we're this far, I need to go ahead and just wash all that clean again. Okay, this is slowly draining out, but let's just give it a little encouragement. Same deal as on the front, we're going to hit it with the rust converter. Now on the lip here that's popped away, I'm going to try and get extra paint on there and hopefully it runs down in. Probably about as much as we can get into that door. On this side, I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to try and work some paint right up in here, let it run down in this lip, and then pinch the lip where it's popping apart back shut with these pliers that have this little plastic protector on them, so I'm not just chewing up the paint. So get just enough paint on here, then it runs down into that crack, and then when I pinch it shut, it'll help perform kind of a sealing layer. Now that lip is pitched back together, it's time to go ahead and just get the paint nicely and uniformly applied on here. Once the paintwork is complete on each door, you will need a custom solution for reinstalling the moisture barrier sheet. It is a vital component to protecting the interior from damp and mold, so don't be tempted to just trash it. Now I wiped up this a little bit to get some of the excess dirt off. And I'm going to try some things. I found these adhesive things. We'll see how those hold up. I don't know how many are even in here. Hopefully more than a few though, because this was expensive. Well, that's it. But that's more than enough that if I apply them strategically on corners, they should provide some extra double stick hold. And then also got some double stick tape, which is a little more ordinary. This stuff is wider than I need, so to make it go farther, I can actually split it down the middle as I apply it. What I just demonstrated there is a good way to slice your finger, so make sure that you don't have the blade poking through the plastic at all if you do that. Time to go ahead and put this back on, which means I need to thread these through here, this through there. All right, now one thing I'm looking for as I line this up is to make sure that these holes right here, where the snap rivets are gonna go, are not being blocked. This here is an indoor-outdoor painter's tape. It is, however, plastic and has a pretty good sticky on it. And I discovered it becomes very permanent if you leave it on too long. In this case, that's what I'm counting on. It'll definitely last longer stuck to a surface like this than masking tape will, so I just want to overlap the edge slightly. Okay. The passenger doors on this vehicle are nearly mirror images of the driver's side units. The same screws, clips, and plugs need to be removed on the passenger doors, and the clean out and repainting requires the same steps. On the passenger side, we went ahead and washed out both doors during the prep work. We probably should have just done that with the driver's front door, but hindsight and all that. That there, kids, is why your Jeep should be parked in a garage or have a very good alarm system that doesn't have an obvious defeat. The vehicle's passenger doors are most exposed to road spray while driving, so cleaning up the bottom lips of these four will tend to resolve the most pressing rust starts. But don't forget, this is a 5-door vehicle, and the 5th also has a bottom lip that's worth investigating. Well, it's hard to see in this light, but there it is. A little bit of rust starting there, a little bit there. So not much at all, very rescuable, but this is a good time to get at it. So same process here. We'll be wire wheeling and just spraying that out with the rust converting paint and then overcoating it again. But if you get at it now while it's still easy, and you don't have to do it when it's rotted out and becomes hard. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again today. Hopefully you found that helpful, and now maybe you've got some ideas on what you can do to preserve your vehicle for the future. Because after all, you may have had fun spending 20 minutes here with us, but the vehicle you've got parked out front is the one that'll hopefully give you a few more years of entertainment. So get out there, work on it, catch any rust you can stop now before it gets to the point where you have to do major body work. Thanks for joining us again today. We'll see you again next time, whenever that is. Has anyone seen my phone?